Hi students, myself Satish Kumar Kodidala, Assistant Professor, School of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Vignan Foundation for Science, Technology and Research, Guntur. In this video, I would like to discuss about diuretics. Diuretics are nothing but the drugs or agents which can increase the excretion of urine from our body. The drugs which can increases the excretion of urine or in other ways, diuretics are nothing but the drugs which can increase the excretion of nitrogen and water content from our body. So as we know that the physiology which is involved in the formation of urine, there are three steps involved in the formation of urine. First one is a glomerular filtration, reabsorption and secretion. So in case of glomerular filtration, the whole process is happened in the kidney. In that kidney also, so there are functional units. The kidney functional units are nothing but the nephrons. So the nephron has the different parts, that is the glomerulus, loop of Henle and distal tubule. So like that there are different parts in the nephron. So glomerular filtration happened at the glomerulus. At that site, the blood is filtered through the glomerulus. So the content of blood except the macromolecules are filtered into the internal lumen of nephron. So along the nephron, there are different sites to reabsorb the most of the filtered contents. Approximately 99% of the filtered content is reabsorbed into our body. So in this case, the diuretics will excretion of nitrogen and water from the body through the urine. The diuretics plays the major role by preventing the reabsorption of this nitrogen and water into the bloodstream. Thereby, the content of nitrogen and water is increased in the urine composition. Thereby, the urine volume is increased. So, in this way, the diuretics will increase the excretion of nitrogen and water from our body through the urine. As we know that there are four major sites of reabsorption are present in the nephron. The diuretics act on these four major sites of reabsorption. Thereby they can prevent the reabsorption of sodium and water. Thereby it increases the sodium and water content in the urine excretion. The diuretics are generally used in the treatment of high blood pressure. In other case, these are extensively used in the removal of kidney stones, and it is also used to reducing the edemas, that is extracellular fluids. For reduction of these edemas also we'll use the diuretics. I will give you a simple example how these diuretics will decrease the blood pressure. Let us assume this one has a water tank which is filled with the water so up to a certain level, so that can maintain the high pressure in the tank, and it is connected to the water pipeline and which is connected to the drain. And the water which is traveled through this pipeline will be filtered through the filter membrane. So let us assume this one has the glomerular filtration in our kidney or nephron, and this pipeline has the interconnections with the water tank at different sides of this pipeline, so like this. And when the water is traveled from the tank to the drain at different points of this pipeline, so again that some of the water which is back transferred to the water tank. Only few amount of water is supplied to the drain, which is due to the interconnections back transfer the some of the content of main pipeline into the water tank. Only some amount of water is transferred to the drain, and most of the water which is filtered through the filter membrane is again back transferred to the water tank. Thereby the pressure which is developed in the tank is maintained as such, and these interconnection pipelines are considered as the reabsorption sites which are present along the nephron. Or when you block the interconnections or interconnection pipelines from main pipeline to the water tank, what will happen? Water which is transferred from the main pipeline to the water tank is blocked. Thereby the total water which is filtered through the filter membrane is transferred to the drain. through the main pipeline. So there is no facility to supply to the water tank through the interconnections. Thereby, the total content of the water which is filtered through the filter membrane is transferred to the drain. So that means the drain volume is increased. Thereby, the water content, the water which is present in the tank is reduced. So the level of the water which is present in the tank is reduced, glomerulus. So in this case, so only 10% of the water which is filtered to the filter membrane is drained through the main pipeline. Why? Because there are some interconnections, and that interconnections will transfer the approximately 90% of this water which is filtered through the filter membrane to the water tank. So only 10% is transferred to the drain. So for that reason, water level is maintained as such by the presence of these interconnections. When these interconnections are blocked, the water which is filtered through the filter membrane is transferred to the drain as such. That means there is no reabsorption or transfer to the water tank. So thereby the water level which is present in the tank is decreased. So the pressure which is present in the water tank is reduced. In this way, the diuretics will play the major role in increasing the excretion of sodium and water through the urine. I hope you understand this concept. So after completion of this video, the student should understand the chemistry of diuretic drugs with respect to their pharmacological activities. They can able to understand the diuretic drug metabolic pathways, adverse effects, and therapeutic value of these diuretic agents. They can also able to understand the structural activity relationship of different classes of diuretic agents, and they are able to study the chemical synthesis of some selected diuretic agents or drugs. So let us see one by one. The contents of this video are the sequence of these videos: introduction to diuretics, and it can explain the physiology of urine formation, sites of reabsorption, classification of diuretic agents and their mechanism of action, structural activity relationship. And finally, we are going to discuss about some important diuretic agents along with their synthesis, properties and pharmacological uses. Let us see one by one. Diuretics are defined as the drugs that can increase the rate of urine formation. These are the drugs which can increase the rate of urine formation. The primary action of most of the diuretics are nothing but inhibition of sodium reabsorption. The primary action of these diuretics are nothing but the increasing of sodium excretion or inhibition of sodium reabsorption. When the sodium reabsorption is decreased, then the sodium excretion is increased. So this will happen at one or more 4 major sites of the reabsorptions which are present along with the nephron. So the nephron has the 4 major sites of reabsorption. So at these 4 major sites, at one or more reabsorption sites, the inhibition of sodium reabsorption is happened, and that may lead to the increasing of sodium excretion. The increasing of sodium excretion is coupled with the excretion of chlorine. Excretion of the chlorine. Since sodium chloride is a major determinant for extracellular fluid volume, so thereby, along with the sodium, the chlorine also gets excreted as sodium chloride. So these diuretics can reduce the extracellular fluid volume, so that means they can decrease the edema. So that is nothing but the occlusion of fluids in the tissues. Occlusion of fluids in the tissue, there is nothing but the edemas. So that means extracellular fluid volume can be reduced by these diuretics as excretion of the sodium chloride from the body. So as we know that the physiology of urine formation consisting of 3 steps, so that are nothing but glomerular filtration, reabsorption, that is nothing but tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. So in case of glomerular filtration, so when you see in this image, so here this part, that is a glomerular part. So in this glomerular part, the glomerular filtration glomerular filtration will takes place. So this is the blood vessels and this one is the glomerulus. Through the internal membranes of this glomerulus, there is a glomerular filtration. That means that except the macromolecules, the contents of bloodstream are diffused into the lumen of nephron. So after completion of this glomerular filtration, the filtrate is travel along the nephron like this. While traveling this filtrate content through the nephron, it travels through the different sides of nephron. So let us see the different sides of this nephron: proximal tubule, loop of Henle, distal tubule, and collecting tubule. So there are 4 sides are there: proximal tubule, loop of Henle, distal tubule, and collecting tubule. So this part, so from here to this one is considered as the proximal tubule, and this U-shape tube is considered as the loop of Henle. And this one is a descending loop of Henle up to here, and this one is the ascending loop of Henle. So this U shape is called as the loop of Henle, and this portion is called as, so from here to this, it is called as the distal tubule, and this descending part is called as the collecting tubule. At these 4 sides, so that means at the proximal tubule, loop of Henle, distal tubule, and collecting tubule, there are some reabsorption sites. So through these reabsorption sites, most of the filtrate content is reabsorbed into the bloodstream. So that means there are different specific facilities are present at these 4 sites for reabsorbing the specific ions which is present in the filtrate by passive and active mechanisms into the bloodstream. So thereby 99% of these filtrate is reabsorbed at these 4 sites. Only approximately 1% of the glomerular filtrate reaching the collecting duct. When you see in the physiology which is happened at the 4 sites of reabsorption, there are 4 major sites along the nephron. So they are responsible for reabsorption of the glomerular filtrate into the bloodstream. So they are nothing but site 1 proximal convoluted tubule, site 2 ascending loop of Henle, site 3 is distal convoluted tubule, site 4 is late distal tubule, and collecting duct. So let us see, so what is the physiology which is happened at these 4 sites. So before going to discuss about the physiology which has happened at the 4 sites of reabsorption, so first we have to understand the environment of nephron and bloodstream. So here when you observe this picture, so this portion is considered as the lumen, there is a nephron lumen, and this one is a outer wall of the nephron, and this one is the extracellular fluid between the nephron and vasa recta. There is a blood vessels, that is nothing but capillaries. I am repeating again. So this space is the lumen, that is an internal space of the nephron, and this one is the nephron wall, and this is the space between the nephron and vasa recta, that is a blood vessel or capillary. This one is a capillary. So first we will discuss about the physiology which has happened at this site 1, that is proximal convoluted tubule. At this site, the sodium and potassium are transferred from lumen to the bloodstream through these cells of the basolateral membrane and interstitial fluid. The transport of sodium and potassium is coupled with active transport of glucose, amino acids, and other organic and inorganic ions through the specific syn-ports. The same way, there is an exchange of H+ ions is occurred in the proximal convoluted tubule cells, and that means the H+ ions are secreted from the bloodstream to the nephron lumen with the help of carbonic anhydrase, and these H+ ions are exchanged with the sodium potassium antiporter, so which is located in the luminal membrane, or it is also called as base border cells. The secreted H+ ions will form the carbonic acid in the lumen when it is combined with the bicarbonate. When the H+ is combined with the HCO3-, then it forms the H2CO3, that is a carbonic acid. The formed carbonic acid is again broken into water and carbon dioxide by the action of carbonic anhydrase which is present in the brush border cells. After formation of water and carbon dioxide from the carbonic acid, these formed water and carbon dioxide will diffuse into the cell and again combine into carbonic acid. So when they are enter into the cell, they are again recombined into the carbonic acid. Carbonic acid which is present inside the cell again dissociated into bicarbonate and H plus ions. The dissociated bicarbonate ions are transported into extracellular fluid or interstitial fluid through the sodium bicarbonate symporter which is present in the basolateral membrane. So this is the sodium and bicarbonate symporter. Through this symporter, the formed bicarbonate from the carbonic acid will transported to the extracellular fluid or interstitial fluid. In that way, sodium bicarbonate is transported into the interstitial fluid by this sodium bicarbonate symporter. In another way, the bicarbonate is transferred through the antiporter, that is a bicarbonate and chlorine antiporter. For each bicarbonate transfer, there is a chlorine is secreted from bloodstream to basolateral cells. And the chlorine which is entered into the basolateral cells will diffuse through the paracellular pathway into the lumen of nephrons. So this is the mechanism which is happened at the site of proximal converted. So I repeat the physiology which is happening at the proximal converted tubule. The sodium and potassium transported from lumen of the nephron to the bloodstream through the lumen wall and interstitial fluid. For that, there is a specific transporters are available for sodium and potassium reabsorption. Along with the sodium and potassium transport, there is an active transport of or active reabsorption of glucose, amino acid and other organic, inorganic ions through specific symports. In the same way, the secretion of H plus ions from bloodstream to lumen of the nephron is happened by the help of carbonic anhydrase. So which is happened with the help of, so the H plus ions which are exchanged with the sodium and hydrogen ion antiporter which is present at the brush border cells or luminal membrane of this nephron. So this sodium and hydrogen antiporter will exchange the H plus ions when the sodium is reabsorbed. The H plus which is entered into the lumen combined with the bicarbonate will form the carbonic acid. The H plus ions are excreted by the action of sodium H plus ion antiporter at the brush border cells or lumen site of these nephrons. So after entry of this H plus ion into the lumen, they combine with the bicarbonate ion and forms the carbonic acid. And this formed carbonic acid with the action of brush border carbonic anhydrase, they will convert it into water and carbon dioxide. After formation of this water and carbon dioxide by the action of carbonic anhydrase, they will diffuse into the cell and recombine into the carbonic acid. And by the action of basolateral carbonic anhydrase, they are again converted into bicarbonate and H plus ions. The produced bicarbonate ion is transported along with the sodium by the sodium and bicarbonate symporter. Sodium and bicarbonate symporter. Produced bicarbonate is transported into the interstitial fluid along with this sodium. So that's why sodium bicarbonate is transported to extracellular fluid by the sodium bicarbonate symporter. And some of the bicarbonate which is formed from the carbonic acid will exchange with the chlorine. Not only the bicarbonate ion, other ions like phosphates, amino acid and other anions which are reabsorbed from the lumen will actively exchange with the chlorine by the ion and chlorine antiporter. So these ions are exchanged with the chlorine into the interstitial fluid, thereby they can enter into the bloodstream. So this is happened at the first site of reabsorption. And at the second site, there is a ascending loop of Henle. So that is a ascending limb of loop of Henle. That is a, so there are two limbs for the loop of Henle. This is the descending limb of loop of Henle, and this one is a ascending limb of loop of Henle. This one is a descending
limb of loop of Henle, and this one is the ascending limb of loop of Henle. So at the ascending limb of loop of Henle, so this one is considered as the second site of reabsorption. At the ascending limb of loop of Henle, there is a sodium potassium chloride symporter is present at the lumen site. So this symporter will reabsorb the sodium potassium chloride into the tissue of lumen wall. So after transport of sodium potassium chloride into the tissues of lumen, the basolateral membrane contains the sodium potassium ATPase antiporter. Through this antiport, sodium is reabsorbed into the bloodstream and potassium is excreted from bloodstream into the lumen. And similarly, there is another symporter which is present at the basolateral membrane, that is nothing but potassium and chloride symporter. Potassium and chloride symporter, and this will actively reabsorb the potassium and chloride into the bloodstream. So this has happened at the second site of reabsorption. I am repeating again this one. So at the second site of reabsorption, that is nothing but ascending limb of loop of Henle. So at this site, there is a presence of sodium potassium chloride symporter at lumen site, and this will reabsorb the sodium, potassium and chloride into the tissues of lumen wall. And at this site, the basolateral membrane contains the sodium potassium ATPase antiporter, and this will reabsorb the sodium by the exchange of potassium from bloodstream into the lumen. In addition to this, the basolateral membrane also has the potassium chloride symporter, and this symporter will reabsorb the potassium and chloride ions from lumen cell wall to the interstitial fluid. So this is happening in the second site of reabsorption, that is nothing but ascending limb of loop of Henle. And the third site, that is nothing but the cortical diluting segment of loop of Henle. So this one, the cortical diluting segment of loop of Henle. So at this site, there is a sodium potassium. At this site, there is a sodium chloride symporter is there. Sodium chloride symporter. Through this sodium chloride symporter, sodium and chloride is reabsorbed from the lumen into the interstitial fluid. And the fourth site is nothing but distal tubule and collecting duct. Distal tubule, this one is a distal tubule and collecting duct. So at the distal tubule and collecting duct, the sodium is again actively reabsorbed. That means at all the sites of reabsorptions, the sodium is reabsorbed. So when you see in the distal tubule and collecting duct, the sodium is again reabsorbed. Along with the sodium reabsorption, there is a balancing of cation and anion content in the lumen and bloodstream. So that means at this site, there is a mechanism that can able to balancing the ionic content in the lumen, in the bloodstream and the lumen filtrate. The cation and anion balance is maintained by the passive diffusion of chloride ions into the bloodstream and secretion of potassium and hydrogen ions from the bloodstream into the lumen. And the absorption of sodium is occurred through the specific channel, specific sodium channel, which is sensitive to the amyloid, and this channel is controlled by the aldosterone. So that is one of the hormone, and that hormone will control this sodium channel which is present in the distal tubule. And this aldosterone controlled sodium channel is sensitive to the amyloid. It is also called as potassium sparing diuretic. At the luminal site of this distal converted tubule, there is a specific channel that is controlled by the aldosterone. This channel will secretes the H plus ions and reabsorb the sodium ions. So at the collecting duct, so there is a specific secretory channels, that is a H plus ATPase channels are present, and the same way potassium and H plus ATPase channels are present. H plus ATPase and potassium H plus ATPase antiporters are present at the luminal site, and at the basolateral membrane it consisting of sodium potassium ATPase channel and potassium channels. So through this, the sodium ions are reabsorbed, and H plus, that is nothing but the water, is secreted into the lumen site. And repeating the physiology which has happened at the collecting duct. This collecting duct has the intercollected cells, and at the lumen site, so there is a presence of H plus ATPase and also potassium H plus ATPase channels, and through these channels H plus is secreted and sodium and potassium are reabsorbed from lumen to the interstitial fluid. So these are the physiology which has happened at the 4 sites of reabsorption. These sites will reabsorb the 99% of filtrate content into the bloodstream, so that only 1% of glomerular filtrate is entered into the urinary bladder. So in some of the situation, for example, in case of high blood pressure, or in case of edemas, or in case of kidney stones, in that case we have to decrease the vascular content volume or extracellular fluid volume, and in case of kidney stones, we have to increase the pressure of urinary bladder. Thereby we can effectively remove the stones which are stuck in the different parts of this urinary system. For this purpose, we'll use the diuretics, and that diuretics will prevent the reabsorption of this sodium and water at the 4 sites of this reabsorption. Thereby it increases the urine volume and decreases the blood pressure, or decreases the vascular blood pressure and also extracellular fluid content. Thereby the pressure which is present in the urinary system will increase, and it also increases the pressure in the urinary system. There are different types of diuretics are there. So let us see the classification of diuretics. Diuretics majorly classified into 2 types. First one is a mercurial diuretics, second one is a non-mercurial diuretics. Mercurial diuretics, which is having the mercury in their chemical structure. The examples of mercurial diuretics includes mersalyl, mercurofilin, mercaptomerin, chloromerodin, merithoxylin, meraluride. So each type of these mercury diuretics having different substituents at R, R1 and X positions, and each one has the different properties by this presence of different substituents. And coming to the mode of action of this mercury diuretics, these drugs primarily inhibit the sodium potassium chloride co-transporter or symporter, which is present at the ascending limb of loop of Henle. So that is the second site of reabsorption. Thereby it increases the urine volume, and the nature of the urine which is formed by these mercury diuretics are nothing but is acidic in nature due to the presence of high amount of anionic content. So when seeing the SAR of this mercury diuretics, this is the basic structure of mercurial diuretics, which consisting of mercury in their structure. The mercury diuretics generally having the carbon chain, which is consisting of at least 3 carbons in that chain, and also consisting of 1 mercury at one end of the chain. And the group R is hydrophilic in nature, which determines the distribution and late excretion of the compound at the substituent at the alpha position, that is X. The substituent at X position will determine the toxicity of the compound, irritation at the site of injection, and rate of the absorption. So the toxicity of the compound, irritation at the site of injection, and the rate of absorption were determined by the substituent at X position or alpha position. So this is about the structural activity relationship of mercurial diuretics. So up to now we discussed about what are diuretics, importance of diuretics, physiology involved in the formation of urine, and the physiology involved at 4 major sites of reabsorption, classification of diuretics. In that we discussed about the mercurial diuretics along with their mechanism of action and structural activity relationship. In the next class we are going to discuss about the non-mercurial diuretics, its subclasses along with the mechanism of action and structural activity relationship. Thank you.